I'm Max Barry, and don't worry, no one's listening. I have a dangerous relationship with food. I'm not sure if this is advice I really should be dispensing to anyone, but I do like to write on the edge of starvation. I find that that's a better thing for me. So I also have a hostile relationship with lunch, so I avoid lunch if I can. So this is a terrible advice. Do not follow this, If the headline is Max Barry dead at 53, then you know what contributed to it.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
Hey, everybody. I'm screenwriter and novelist Edward Savio. Welcome to the podcast. I first came across Max Barry when I stumbled onto Jennifer Government, a dystopian corporate nightmare where brand loyalty has gone fully homicidal. Since then, I've read everything from his debut Syrup to Lexicon, where words can literally kill, Providence, his darkly funny spin on space opera and military sci-fi, and his latest, The 22 Murders of Madison May, now out in paperback, which sets a serial killer loose across the multiverse with reality-bending consequences. His work is sly, subversive, and just grounded enough to make the weirdness hit harder. He's also the creator of Nation States, the cult online game where you run your own country and try not to immediately become a dictator. We're going to dig into how satire survives in a world that keeps outpacing it and why the line between ridiculous and real is thinner than we'd like to admit. And now, here's my conversation with Max Barry.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
Max, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And remember, Max, we can say whatever we want because no one's listening.
All right, good to know.
I always wanted to write, like from the beginning. Actually, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a writer-director because I wanted to tell the stories my way. And then I became a screenwriter. My stories weren't told the way I wanted them necessarily to tell because everybody else is involved. And I found my way strangely, finally, to being a novelist where I did have control again. How did you get started into this?
Yeah, well, probably like everyone, where I read a lot of books as a kid and I loved them. It was a huge part of my childhood growing up, just reading book after book after book, which is something that I really hope that every kid gets to experience and every parent gets to give to their child, that experience of loving books. It's so important. And yes, I used to write stories, little short stories in recess, which looking back probably means I didn't have many friends in primary school, but I do remember sitting by myself writing stories. In high school, I discovered that people were much more interested in reading my short stories if I made them characters in the story. So it's possibly a little bit of a satire, like the connection with the real world into my fiction even then. So I've told this story a million times, but I wrote this one short story about a girl in my class called Jenny, who was this very well-mannered girl, very polite girl, who I had a bit of a thing for. And in my short story, she has sex with an exchange student and gets hit by a train. And everyone in my class loved this story except Jenny. But then I ended up marrying her, so it all worked out.
That's great. I mean, yeah, I think we all, I had someone I had a crush on in high school, and I wrote this television show in my head, kind of get myself through the angst of teenage life. And of course, she committed suicide in one of the episodes, but it was a dream and she came back because I think, especially when we're younger, I think death just doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It is nothing, right?
It's a plot twist. Yeah.
It's a plot twist. It's a pimple, death. It's about equal. I started very early as well. But see, I did not read early on. I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I watched things and I read scripts, but I didn't have the basis of books until later. And it was something that one of my teachers finally said. He handed me a group of books and he just said, just read these. I know that you're going to hate first 30, 40, 50, 70 pages of these because it's going to be hard to get into. But they're good storytelling. One of the things that's been wonderful as I've been doing this, Max, is I've been reading or rereading people that I've read before and reading new people as well. And I'm happier. I have to write in order to be happy, but also reading, not just consuming media. I love movies. I love television, but there's something different about reading.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing is, though, and like not to jump straight into the death of the novel, but it is such a different world now for adults reading than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago because of smartphones and because there is this incredible alternative stream of entertainment that's available to us all the time. And the act of like picking up a novel, sitting down with a novel and giving yourself 30, 60, 90 minutes at a time to read it, it feels so much harder to make that happen, to find those big chunks of time for a novel, because novels don't give themselves to you right away. One of my favorite authors is Margaret Atwood, probably best known at the moment for Handmaid's Tale. Almost every Margaret Atwood novel I've read, not a whole lot is happening in those first 3 chapters.
It's really just letting you, a lot of world building.
Yeah. As you're gently easing into this world that she's created. But yeah, when you find a good novel, I find that, as you say, it's one of the things that makes me happy, finding a good novel and even knowing I've got a book on the side or the bedside table that is waiting for me.
I came to you through Jennifer Government. I love that story. I love the tone. And I've probably read and or listened to that at least 3 or 4 times.
How's the audiobook?
The audiobook's great.
I have never listened to any of my audiobooks purely because I can't stand to hear my own writing. Like I feel so bad about my own writing when I hear someone else read it. It's awful. I do go back and read my own stuff occasionally. Sometimes it's a disappointing process where something is not quite as good as it was in my head.
Do you have the opposite?
Where it's better? Yes, sometimes I do. I reread it and I think, wow, good job, Max. Yeah. Although it was like young Max, like this is 52-year-old Max. So Max who wrote Syrup was like 22, 23. So it's getting postcards from a different country. So I can't take a whole lot of credit for it. But when you're a writer, you're constantly thinking about your career, like where you're going with this. You've done A, you've done B, what's next? And should it be completely different from A and B, or should it be some sort of logical extension? And if so, then which direction should that extension go? I'm sort of curious about the writer that I used to be and how that might impact the writer that I am today. There are no easy answers to that, but yeah, it's interesting to look at my old book and think, what do I now think about that book, and what are some things I would want to take from it into the future, and what are some aspects of it I would like to throw out the window.
I agree. I think there's something about that young writing that has an energy to it, and I think actually I've gotten better as a writer. But I also think what happens is your first book, you are pouring a lot of stuff into it, where you've never poured anything into anything. And then the later books, there's less new stuff that you've gone through in life. And this leads right into what I want to say. What we do is weird, right? We have a weird relationship with the world, and our jobs are strange. And part of what I wanted to do with this is I get to talk to people who do what I do and understand how strange that is. I don't know if this happens to you, but people in my life are great. But sometimes they don't understand exactly why I'm locked down in a room for a while. Why am I this person who wants to be the last person at a party, but is also the one that's the hermit in the basement, in the studio working? Do the people around you kind of understand your situation?
Yeah, that's a really great question and observation. Obviously, if you're married to someone or the child of someone who promises you that they're an author and they produce these very important books, and then they just sort of go into their office and seem to do nothing day after day, then there is some understandable skepticism from those people about whether you really are as important, doing as important things as you claim. But one of the most important factors for me on the road to becoming an author, so I grew up in Melbourne, Australia, and I moved to Perth, which is the other side of Australia, and there was a famous author who came to Perth, an international best-selling author of some fantasy series, I think. Perth, although it's a city, is a small city a million miles from everywhere. So the idea of being an author was very exotic and not really credible. This guy came out and he was like sitting at a little table after he'd done his little talk, and people were getting books signed, and some girl came up and asked him a question about in so-and-so book when, Princess Aurora did this. And so the author has given her this like dead serious answer about, according to the prophecy, she needed to. And I was just struck by how everyone was taking this really seriously.
Wow.
It was credible to them. Like, they cared about it and they made it real. So even though the whole situation was faintly absurd on its face, it did give me a lot of confidence that this is a real thing you can do. You can actually go and create stories and people will care about them, these characters that you made up, and it'll mean things to people. So being an author is a weird thing to do.
So I normally write standalone books, but I've written a series and it's sci-fi, and it deals with this kid who's 1,500 years old. And people come up to me or text me or DM me, and they'll be like, is this piece of history true?
Yeah. Look, when you've got like a fantasy world and people are asking about details, I think it's a little different to something like Jennifer Government or Lexicon, which have like a central conceit, like a one-word conceit at their heart. And it's the real world, but there's one thing that's different. And anytime a reader comes up to an author and says, but what about this? Or, does it really make sense if this? And, what research did you do on this? I think sometimes authors can get a bit defensive about that and be like, just go with it. It's the conceit, which is not what readers want to hear. Readers need to be told that what they have given themselves into and what they have accepted is actually true in the most important sense. What we do is we make people believe in something that is invented and yet is true in a core sense. I do get questions about that, and I always feel a duty to reassure the person who's asking me that what I have given them is true. And if they have somehow identified some glaring plot hole in your book, well then, that's not great and you're a bad writer. But so with Jennifer Government and Lexicon, I think they're kind of not simple concepts, especially Lexicon, but it's not like I had to invent whole worlds. I really just started with the one idea. So Jennifer Government is, what does the world look like if everything is like super ultra libertarian and it's private everything and public nothing, and it's been like this for the last 20 years. I didn't have to like answer difficult question after difficult question because the answers flowed quite easily once you accepted the core premise of this world. I don't interact with readers a whole lot, especially because I'm based in Australia and my main readership is in the US. I used to really enjoy that because it was the part of the job where I got to actually go out and move amongst the fellow humans and see what they thought.
Yeah, I agree.
It is a strange part of the process when you do actually speak with people who have read your stuff. I mean, even yourself, that, we've shared this connection where you've read some of my work and we've created this story together where I've given you the printed mass and you have melded your mind with it and created a variation in your head that no one else would have exactly the same version of. And I don't know exactly how that version looks to you. So it's a really fun part of the process to see how that looks. It always feels slightly divorced from like what I do. Like I build the book and it's complete in my head, but it then goes out in the world and people create their own versions in their heads.
Wanting to be a filmmaker, I wanted to have that start to finish thing where I could put the thing out there and everybody see the vision. Because in the Battle for Forever series, it's very much similar to what you said about Lexicon and Jennifer Government, where there's one conceit. The world is exactly the same, except there's a couple of hundred people that age one day for every 100 days. They're not immortal. They die if they get hit by a train. So it was fun to build around a conceit like that because, like you said, you can put the real world there, but just that little bit of a conceit, someone being that much older, or, everybody having last names of the companies that they work for, or words blowing people's minds, literally, right? that little tiny conceit, it changes a lot of things, even though you don't have to necessarily do research or quote inventing, but the wave of change going out from that little idea in Jennifer Government changes everything.
So Jennifer Government, although it feels a bit like a far future story, was always set in an alternate present. It was just this social conceit, as if we'd like gone back 20 years and made different political decisions, but everything else was the same. That book was released in 2003, I think. It is a different world after 20 years, but
I just reread it. It still feels fresh. It does.
Right. Oh, that's good. Yeah. I do wonder about, I haven't reread that one in a little while, but the only real difference I think is back in the early 2000s, the idea of rising corporate power was much more of a boogeyman, whereas now, like corporations, we still know they do bad things and all the rest, but I think the politics have changed a little bit.
Speaking about this kind of idea of when you were talking about people optioning things, I started out as a screenwriter and then kind of moved into this. I was interesting about Syrup. Like I watched the movie that got made from that.
Oh, yes.
And so you had a screenwriting credit. You had an and, not an ampersand, right? Not an ampersand. For those not listening, this distinction is important in the film and television industry.
The ampersand means you were part of a team working together, right?
You were working together, same room. So I saw you in one of the first
brief
scenes. Brief cameo.
Yes.
So, and I was like, that absolutely looks like a writer. Like, I'm like, that is a writer. That's a writer. That's not an actor.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't sound like a compliment, but yeah, no. It was so fun. That movie getting made. So it was crazy because, so Syrup was my first novel. I wrote it when I was a young person working a corporate job and
using two X's.
Failed to realize that it would turn off an awful lot of readers from picking it up in the first place. Seeing those two X's, you have to read the book to get the joke. So yeah, bad on me for not seeing that one in advance. But yes, it was like my dream novel, right? So I was working selling computers for HP. And in my lunch breaks, I was sneaking away with my corporate laptop and pounding out a few hundred words in my car, which was an absolute piece of junk that I eventually sold for $200. And I'm writing this book about, Hollywood and these people trying to make it big, young people trying to crack their dreams of becoming rich and famous. So it was the book that ended up launching my career. And then later, further down the track, there are these film people who want to make it into a movie. And it felt like such a culmination of that dream. And so I've written plenty of scripts for my stuff, sometimes as part of a production and sometimes as just this is what I think should happen. Can anyone do anything with this pilot script I've written for Jennifer Government? But yes, they brought me out. They had these trucks and like it was a big production and there were dozens of people everywhere and it was super cool. I remember all these extras. They had people, just like random people in suits, to wander around. And
right.
So, and they're filming in New York, which is a very exotic place to me as an Australian.
Sure.
So it felt like I had just flown into this fantasy world where all these invented people that I had apparently conjured into being doing things that I had written. That was fantastic.
Such
even
a cool
before
thing,
anyone saw the movie or anything else, it was just such a magical process of seeing that get turned into a real thing. And I was very happy to be part of it.
I will write the screenplay or at least start a screenplay of a book because there's something in my brain that writes dialogue differently and then drop all that dialogue into the book because it just worked better.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Even though I'm not a screenwriter and I don't really have any ambitions in that area, I do sometimes if I'm listening to people, and maybe you do, I'm interested if you do this as well. If I, in real life and also sometimes if I'm watching a show, I'll think about how it looks written as a screenplay. So I'll just imagine, the name and then the dialogue tag. And because when you actually type it out on the page, it feels quite artificial. And so I'm trying to reconcile the two. How does this thing that I'm hearing in real life visually look on a page and vice versa?
So with dialogue, I don't think about it as much that way because I'm really good with dialogue and I can see it back and forth and banter is good. What I'm really curious about is when I see really good action that has no dialogue, but has tension I want to see how they write that in stage direction.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Because was it this tense in the screenplay? I want to see that because especially now as a person who writes novels and then also writes screenplays, I find I'm more descriptive in my screenplays than I was probably originally.
Okay.
Do you also find yourself rewriting? You're rewriting a little bit? Some shows?
Rewriting shows, like how I would have done it. Yes, for sure. Yeah. They really screwed that up. Those lines should have been in the reverse order or whatever.
Oh.
Yeah. The stage direction in screenplays, I feel like, I just read the other day that Alex Garland's screenplays apparently are really light on that direction,
Yes.
which I found interesting, which would make sense. It feels to me like if you're writing a screenplay, then the dialogue is a pretty direct pipeline from you to what ends up on the screen. I mean, obviously, it all gets changed by what happens on the day in editing and everything else, but it is far more direct than the stage direction. The director is going to be making a lot of decisions in that area that you don't really have control over.
I wanted to be a writer-director. So in the beginning, I think people who are going to direct their own work tend to give less direction. They know when he walks up to her and takes her hand and pulls her toward the door, how it's going to look, rather than, the camera swirls around and this and that, or what kind of moment is this? Is this a love story? Is this a thriller moment? You could say the same line. He took her hand and dragged her toward the door, and it could be going to a bedroom. It could be getting away from a killer. And we need to say that in a book.
Yes.
In a screenplay, you give less direction. So let me ask you a question. Of all your characters, who would make the absolute worst roommate?
The absolute worst roommate, gee, a lot of the characters are obviously bad people who are super untrustworthy. I mean, John Nike from Jennifer Government.
Which John Nike or which John Nike?
Well,
or John
either
Nike?
of the John Nikes would be pretty bad.
But John Nike. But we know which one John Nike is.
But John Nike. Yeah. A lot of the Jennifer Government, it's a plotty novel, so there's lots of, betrayals and that sort of stuff.
I love that. I love that book, by the way. I really do.
Scat's roommate, Sneaky Pete, obviously, well, I don't want to give away too many spoilers here, but he'd be a terrible one as well. He's a literal roommate in the novel, so he fits the mold pretty well as well.
Oh, Sneaky Pete. Well, yeah.
And again, one of my books has a murderer in it, so maybe he's the worst roommate.
Could be. Maybe. The fact that didn't go straight to the top.
That's right.
Might say something.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to go deep into the weeds on the process of doing what we do. Don't worry, no one's listening. This episode is brought to you by perfectionism. We'd love to have Edward read this ad, but it's not quite ready. Perfectionism. We'll get back to you eventually. Stick around. We've got more with Max Barry after this. We've got a lot more to come, including going deep into the weeds on process. I want to give a big shout out to Bookster, home to a huge community of readers, for partnering with us so we can go deep with these writers. They said yes, so you can eavesdrop on our conversations. Readers, there's a lot of excellent content, recommendations, and Q&As with authors. Writers, Bookster helps you reach new readers. Whether you're a reader or a writer, check out bookster.com. And now, even though you're not supposed to be listening, back to the show. Welcome back to Don't Worry, No One's Listening. I'm Edward Savio, still here with Max Barry, who, being a near futurist, it's kind of cool that we're talking to him tomorrow because he's in Australia. Thanks for doing this, by the way. I know that we had originally given you a time and it was in the middle of the night for you. And you were like, maybe not so much at 4 a.m.
I was just asking very politely if it was possible to shift it out of my 4 a.m. slot. I do appreciate that. The other thing about the interview today is my voice is not normally like this. This is my coming out of a cold voice. You look surprised at that, so I must be doing okay.
Your voice is deeper. Who knows? I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, could be a plus.
It could be. All right, Max, let's get into the weeds here on the creative process. We talked about how you apologized to your stable of early readers because you said your early drafts are terribly broken.
Yeah, I think people imagine that when I'm giving early drafts to people that it's, fantastic, that it's this great sneak peek into the finished product. When, in fact, if you imagine any book or movie that you love, imagine your first exposure to it was some version where the great bits actually aren't that great. There's, some clunky lines here. There's a really annoying part where this character that you love does something really stupid. There's all that sort of thing that early readers have to put up with. And it probably ruins the story for them forever. So even if it would have been some book that they love, they have to read this bad version of it first. They can never forget.
Well, I want to thank them because they give you the ability to bring us the finals that we enjoy. So my writing process can get sometimes complicated. Again, I was a screenwriter, so I used to be super about structure. And then part of the freeness of writing a novel was like, oh, I don't have to do this. And then all of a sudden I went, oh, shit, I actually do have to get back to do this. What's your process? Take me through it, tools you use, how you organize. And if it's different all the time, how does that change?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great question. So the structure thing, and we touched on this before when I was talking about myself as a younger writer versus today. And I think we both agreed that we feel like we're better writers now than we were as young people. And a question for me is that as I get older and more experienced, I know a lot more about how to avoid traps and how to structure a story in a way that won't make it terribly broken by the time I get to page 200. But also, is that always a good thing? Because you do write when you're young without any real awareness of where the boundaries are supposed to be. You can make terrible choices, but you also make choices that don't make any sense logically, but nevertheless, they become a fundamental part of what makes that book unique and why people connect with it. There is certainly a downside to becoming more experienced and to having strong ideas of structure because it starts to make you a bit like everyone else. And my number one piece of advice for writers, number two after read books, is cling to what makes you different, because no one wants to read your book that is just like everyone else's book. No. Those books are already out there. And there is this process sometimes that new writers go through where they write and then they want to get better. So they ask for advice, and the advice starts getting them to knock off all the sharp edges and bits of their story and their writing style that makes them different until they've got a story that, is more technically correct or it has a more conventional structure or whatever, but is also less exciting and possibly less successful. Part of the effort that I'm making as I get more experienced is not to feel like I'm going to write into a smaller and smaller box each time, but to go do something that may not work and could break down terribly in around page 200. In terms of how the process works for me, I do feel like every book is a new discovery. So I spend a lot of time figuring out rules for how this story works and what should happen and how it should happen. And when I go on to the next one, I haven't written any sequels. It's a process of starting again from scratch and figuring out what is right for that book.
So a couple things you said I want to address. When I first was writing as a screenwriter, I wrote this screenplay and I got into one of the top people at Warner Brothers, and I was in this person's office and he read the script and he had a meeting with me and he goes, "This is as good as any thing we released last year." And I was like, "Oh, that's thank you." And he goes, no. He goes, "That's not good." See, because if your stuff is just as good as everything else that's been put out, I can go hire those people that I know. They've already done this 20 times before. I've never worked with you. I don't know what you're going to give me when we put pressure on you. So you got to give me something that is you, that isn't as good as anyone else out there.
Right.
I almost got fired from a gig I did with Sony because I followed the notes and I listened to them. And I didn't do, which is my big thing, which is don't do what they say, do what they mean. Right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
I listened to what they said, not what they meant. And then I said, "Give this back to me. Let me go do it." And I put myself back into it, with their notes, but I put myself into it. And one of the things that you were saying there, what is the format that you do this? Are you handwriting verbal notes? Where are you organizing them all?
I just write a gigantic document. I use LibreOffice as my word processor, and at the end of each novel, I have the novel part, which is somewhere around 80,000 words, and I have the notes and deleted sections part, which is anywhere from 50 to 200,000 words. And I have some like monstrous documents of stuff that was ideas and deleted bits that didn't make it into the novel. But that's that feedback process that you mentioned, that is really gratifying to hear, actually, because I certainly agree that the right way to handle feedback is to seek it, but not follow it, at least not directly. And it's really interesting to me to hear that applies even at the highest levels of screenwriting, that you would not just be your writing monkey for producers, because I think I've had that experience before when I have dealt with producers and I've been given notes and I've been like, well, these notes don't make any sense to me, but if that's what I'm being told to do and I'm a screenwriter, then okay. And of course, the end result is terrible. So, my process of getting feedback, we talked about the early readers as well, is I will try to have my stuff read by people that I know. So when I'm getting feedback, it's not just anonymous. I need to understand the person a little bit to be like, what sort of person would say this? But the value in it is definitely that you get a perspective that you didn't have before. So I'm really trying to get an idea of how the story looks to someone who didn't write it. So I'm not asking people to tell me how to write it. I'm just asking them how they feel and how the book looks to them. Then suddenly I have the perspective and I can make intelligent decisions about what to do, if anything, about that story. So yeah, that's great. I wish that now that I had been braver when I was doing screenwriting jobs and gotten ridiculous notes from producers.
Well, and this is how I got brave, which was when I almost got fired first time. They were just like, we're going to fire you. And I'm like, well, then I'm going to do this my way. If I'm going to get fired, I'm going to do this the way that I want to do it. And then if you fire me, that's okay. But I think if they were writers, they would be writers. What they know is they know what's not working. They don't know what can make it work. So I always look at studio notes and notes from people as they've hit a pothole, their tire's flat, they don't know why the pothole was there, they just know the pothole was there. And they're like, well, just pave it over. And it's like, no, maybe we can avoid it. Maybe we could go a different route. There's a couple of different ways I can solve that problem. I don't just have to pave it over or cut it out. But I do find it interesting that you need to know the person that's reading that. I find that to be true as well. My kids are big readers of mine, even when the thing's not always appropriate. They're old enough now. They give me good advice and they're tough. Do you give permission to those readers to be as tough as they can be?
Yeah, I explain that what I'm looking for, and I try to tell people who are giving feedback that I'm not looking for them to
say how good
tell
this
me
is.
What to do, and to not to give me praise. I think sometimes the trap that early readers can fall into, if they're not set up properly in the first place, is they try to write a review that would make sense to other people. And what I'm really trying to tell these people is I don't want you to think about how other people will react to this book. I want to hear how it made you feel. And so if you feel like, well, I'm sure other people will like this, but personally, I didn't like that. I need to hear the bit about you personally, because it's always a terrible thing when people, or even worse, a group of people, start trying to imagine what other people will think about a creative work. It's, I don't all the worst decisions come out of that sort of situation.
There's so many times someone has said, people aren't going to think this is funny. And I'm like, trust me, this is funny. And
if it's like, I don't find this funny, then you can deal with that. As soon as it becomes, I don't think other people, then it's not worth listening to.
One of the things you talked about before, which was risk, about the younger writer and the more experienced writer sometimes knowing too much. One of the side little notes about this, don't worry, no one's listening, is it's also the way we should write. Write like no one's looking over your shoulder, because that's a time when you can take risks. Just like you said, when I'm trying to think of how someone else is going to respond rather than thinking about how I want this to be, that's where I get into trouble.
Yeah, and I find that more and more these days, as I am older, I am writing because I really enjoy the process of writing. In my younger days, I really enjoyed the process of writing as well, but I also had stars in my eyes, and wouldn't that be amazing to see myself as a published author? So now the process of actually publishing a book is the least exciting part of it. The building the world is the exciting part of it. So I don't really have that issue anymore of like trying to please other people. So that's one of the benefits of getting older. I think that you care a lot less about what other people think. And for better or worse, you are creating something that is good in your eyes only.
Do you have any weird writing rituals or habits that might seem strange to others?
Yeah, I have a dangerous relationship with food. I'm not sure if this is advice I really should be dispensing to anyone, but I do like to write on the edge of starvation. I find that that's a better thing for me. So I always used to like to write by falling out of bed in the morning and making a coffee, going upstairs to the office and writing on an empty stomach until I started to feel like I was going to pass out. But I have kids in the house with routines. Nowadays, I do tend to like do morning routine things, but still, if I can write before eating anything, I enjoy that. I also have a hostile relationship with lunch, so I avoid lunch if I can. So this is a terrible advice. Do not follow this. You know, if the headline is Max Barry dead at 53, then you know what contributed to it. But yeah, keeps me a bit clearer in the head. You know, I don't do drugs, but I will avoid carbohydrates.
I love that, by the way. That's my favorite so far. Normally a follow-up is, do you have any comfort foods or when you write? But apparently they're not. You just know.
No, they're all the enemy. Also, I stand up. I'm standing up right now, which is...
I noticed you doing that. That's how I write. I'm in the studio right now, and my writing area studio is out there, and I've my stand-up desk, and I love it because, first of all, it's better, healthier. Second of all, I'm walking around and sometimes blocking out things as I'm describing them. People used to look in my place in San Francisco and just be like, what is this person doing? Why are they having a fit in the middle of the room?
Yeah, just keeping the energy up is good. The fundamental thing for me is just making sure that I'm feeling happy about writing, that it should be something that I look forward to. I found this super helpful for many, many years, is having a maximum word limit each day, and like quite a low one, like 500 words. If I set myself a maximum limit and I say, okay, no matter how well it's going, at 500 words, you have to stop. The point was just to make sure that each day I'm feeling like good about what I'm about to do and in a happy space. Then spend the rest of the day thinking about, well, when I get back to this tomorrow, I might do this, I might do that. And it was really productive for the creative process.
I heard someone talk about this, and I don't do this, but I thought it was interesting, which is that they would stop writing in the middle of a scene. So they weren't starting anew the next day. They were coming into something where they had to be running. What are the other challenges that you have? Like, for me, I get stuck rewriting early parts of a draft rather than taking a first pass the whole way through and letting the first draft be shit. I've talked to Chris Moore, a bunch of other writers. They can write one first draft really quickly. I'm still deciding what the book is in the beginning. So
yeah. So I'm really shocked if the idea is to write a first draft with the first idea that springs into your head. The process for me of getting a book up, like Lexicon, for example, I think I wrote the first scene, I don't know how many years before I wrote most of it. Lexicon started as this idea of, it's about copyright. Yeah. So this book that has nothing to do with copyright whatsoever now, it was started off as an idea that there were some murderers going around killing authors to bring forward the expiry of their copyright dates. But there was a process of years of writing and rewriting different openings and rewriting first chapters and second chapters and third chapters over and over and over before I really felt like, okay, here it is. And then I could go on and write with confidence. Not so much for the last couple of books, because I started with quite a strong idea of what they should be from the beginning.
You do something that I've done where you'll come into a section, a break, even a chapter, and you won't tell me who's talking. You'll just say he or she. And I think I know who this scene's about. But for new writers, you're always told to put, the main character in that scene, their name first. And in the first time we see it, we need to know who that is. And fuck it. You can break rules. You have to break rules. Is that something that you just do consciously, or is that something that's just your style and you don't even recognize it? And I'm bringing this up for the first time.
Yeah, no, I think that's just because I feel a little bit perverse, and it's probably a good instinct actually, but I know you should let the reader know who's talking, because that's polite and readers don't want to have to fight you to get the story out. But I also feel like an idiot if I'm doing something like Richard Stark stopped and gazed in the mirror, doing these little tricks that you can do as a writer to impart information. Yeah, I also feel like that's a bit wanky. Like I should not be so perverse about it. But yeah, anytime that you can not do something the way it's supposed to be done without completely pissing the reader off is probably a good thing. So yeah, I don't like to obviously start a chapter. If I can start a chapter a little bit in an interesting way, then I'll want to do that.
No, I liked it, but it was something that stood out to me because it was subversive a bit. The other thing I was going to ask you, so I cannot write something. I don't think I've ever had an untitled project because I can't do something unless I have the title. It doesn't click for me because I have to see the trailer for it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I have to see the trailer.
Well, that's smart, because then you don't wind up with this finished book that is completely unmarketable because the core premise is not saleable. You can't communicate it. I was just going to say it's the complete opposite for me. I rarely have a title. I'm like scrambling around for a title as the book is going to print almost all the time, because I often don't have an idea of what the book is until quite late in the process of writing it. And yeah, how to sum that all up is often challenging for me. And I think a lot of writers as well have a lot of difficulty in saying what their book is about. It's about 90,000 words, but it's really hard for us to step back and sell it.
I'm really good with titles. At the last minute, when we were doing one thing that was a pitch, Hollywood Reporter was like, we need a title. And it was like this horrible title. It was The Novel Detective. And because it's about a guy who wants to be a cop, but he can't be a cop because he's an idiot. But he's going to treat being a library detective as if he's a cop. He's just going to take it so seriously. Like a Chris Farley character was written for Chris Farley. And the last second, they're like, what's the title? And I'm like, book 'em. Right? That's what it's got to be.
Yeah, that's good.
So I can do that. But what I can't do, I can't give you 3 paragraphs of like the
back of the book, the jacket description.
The jacket description. That's so hard. Like, what's the famous quote from Mark Twain? I didn't have enough time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead.
Yeah, that is difficult. I probably struggle with that as well. And sometimes the publisher will write it for you, which is nice, but they'll always ask you to take a crack at it. There's an art to it that doesn't have a whole lot of overlap with the art of writing a novel. So
writer's block. I always have a few things going. So how I deal with it most times is I just slide over to something else, one of the other projects. It's also how I weaponize procrastination when I'm supposed to be doing something. I often work on something I'm not supposed to be working on. I've written entire screenplays that way. So do you ever get it? How do you deal with it?
Yes. Yeah, I have a very strong belief that writer's block is not the fault of the writer. It's because you're trying to make a bad idea work. It's always the fault of the book. So understandably, you feel reluctant to work on this piece of crap because there's something wrong with it. And you can do the thing that you mentioned where you have several projects you slide between. And I have certainly done that. I think that is kind of effective. It means you can wind up finishing nothing for quite a long period of time, and then all of a sudden you finish a couple all at once. The problem though is that you still have these broken pieces of crap and you're taking a while to figure out how to fix them. So a really simple thing that I've always done is just to go back and delete whatever I did recently and go in a different direction. So it might be that I will delete a sentence, still nothing, a paragraph, a scene, And then, yeah, it's amazing for me how often something so simple will actually open up some new possibilities I hadn't thought of before.
I agree with that. I use Ulysses, and I'll just take one of the sheets and just drop it into this thing called unused or outs. It might have 200,000 words in it. You're right that the writer's block is usually that I've run up against a problem that either I've caused or the book has caused. And, the way out is to sometimes back it out. Julia Whalen, when I asked her about this, she goes, I don't get writer's block because I know the why of the scene I'm writing. And if I know the why am I writing the scene? Why is this scene here? And why does it need to be in this book or this screenplay? Most people don't talk about it that way, that it's not the problem with the whole book, but it's probably the scene or the direction you took it in.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
I think that's a very good way to look at it.
I don't think it's a personal failing, whereas I think the instinct of many writers, especially new writers, to feel like, well, I just need to be stronger or be tougher and to keep working on this thing, even though it feels terrible. I think the instinct that it feels terrible is not that you're a terrible writer. It's that this terrible book is making you try to push it when it shouldn't be pushed. And yeah, how you fix that is, of course, the big question.
Everybody has their own way of dealing with the process. And it's fascinating that I recognize myself in a little piece of what you're saying and a little piece of what other people say. One person was like, writer's block doesn't exist. What you're saying is the same thing, which is it really doesn't exist. It's not like you just got to tough it out. It's that you actually don't want to do this because it's wrong. It's where your good idea took a left when it should still be barreling down the road. So in light of that, what's the best advice you've ever got about writing?
Oh, wow. The best advice I ever got about writing, I mean, the really obvious ones are true, that you need to read and you need to write. So I don't think it's possible to go past those two. They are self-evidently true. But nevertheless, it's amazing how often they're not followed. It always used to be funny to me to go to these writers' conferences where everyone's milling around and talking and doing everything except writing, the thing that we actually are supposed to all be doing there. They're all a distraction. Marking a book, going on podcasts, it's all not what you should be doing.
It's so funny.
Nevertheless, here we are. Again, this is not medical advice, but it's stuff, things you have to figure out as an author. But the fundamental of putting yourself into that happy place for writing is, I think, is pretty true for everyone.
So what's the worst advice?
Oh, the worst advice. Yeah, I haven't really paid attention to much advice I've been given in the last 10 or 20 years, I think. I've been trying to figure it out for myself the whole time as a pig-headed individual, for better or worse. So the worst popular advice I see, I think, is about trying to market your book too early. And to be thinking about marketing your book. I have a really strong view that you need to make a good book, and everything else can be figured out later. Because if you're thinking about the marketing and, is this publishable and all the rest, then it will trip you up. So my first novel, Syrup, was set in the Coca-Cola company, and it never really occurred to me to think, oh, can you do that? Are you allowed to set books in actual companies and do you get sued? And Jennifer Government, of course, has got lots of real company names in it as well. And the companies that are doing things that they wouldn't actually like to be associated with, like murdering people.
My favorite is the disclaimer in the front of that book. It's just great.
Yeah, well, this is what happened. So everyone quite liked Syrup, and we never had an issue with Coca-Cola, and people were surprised, saying, how did you set the book in Coca-Cola? And I was like, well, I don't know, I just did it, and no one objected. Right. And for Jennifer Government, the publisher was fine with it at first. They found it quite exciting and cool. But then the closer we got to publication date, the more nervous they became. And they had a negotiation with the legal department. And the legal department said it would be okay if they could put this disclaimer that said, not only, we're not saying that these things actually happened, but we believe that these companies would never do anything like this. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Could actually see Nike knocking someone off in the right circumstances, but that's what the disclaimer says, yeah.
So speaking of titles, did the concept come to you for Jennifer Government, or did the thing that I'm going to name people the last name of a company, did that idea come first or did that come later?
The names came later. The core idea was just this very ultra-libertarian view of how the world should operate. So I was quite interested in ideas of different political economics and how society could be organized. And I found the ultra-libertarian one to be pretty funny, personally. I didn't really realize at the time how seriously a lot of people took it, and still take it to this day, and find my view that it's funny to be offensive. But nevertheless, I thought it was just amazing how people would like lay out these long screeds and say how great the world would be if all education was private and every road was a private road and all the rest.
Yeah.
And
sure.
I was like, yeah, because there are these earnest justifications, but not just how it would be good for you personally if you didn't have to like subsidize someone else's education, but how society would be a better place and it would be this kind of utopia. So
I think these people don't recognize the past, like before corporations existed and how we did business and how communities worked. I just think they forget that we had hundreds of thousands of years of humanity. It's like before these companies came about, and they're like, you're morons if you think that this is the better way to organize the world. We
could be going back there. The robber barons are coming back.
Oh, well, that's true. It's true.
Yeah, but the names idea was obviously like a callback to how John Smith, who was the blacksmith, and so people's surnames have always been quite tied up to their occupation historically. So it was just an idea to return to that.
But I felt like for me that was so funny because like to hear that was later, because I feel like that naming structure told me so much about that world instantaneously. I also find your latest, which is the 22 Murders, is the latest, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Very different. And I think that's fun for you as a writer. I think the biggest problem that most writers writing series or very tight genre is you don't get to experiment.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. Like, obviously, you refine your craft if you're working in the same genre. I was on a panel or some sort of thing with Jeffrey Deaver, and I asked, do you get bored? Do you want to go and do something completely different just for the hell of it? And he said, no, absolutely not. That the joy for him is in taking this particular framework and then operating within it and finding new ways to evolve the story within the framework rather than, as I probably do, throw out the framework each time and come up with something new.
As a screenwriter, I would do different things and wouldn't want to stay within a specific thing. And sometimes that can hurt your career a little bit. What's the most unexpected turn your career has taken? For me, becoming a novelist was the surprise because I always saw myself as a screenwriter for a long time, but I wanted to tell more expansive stories and also have more control over the thing. What's the twist for you?
Yeah, for me, the twist is probably that I have been doing writing and programming simultaneously for pretty much my whole career. I don't mean like I work for a company doing programming. I mean, I build websites and web things. For Jennifer Government, I had the idea of creating this website, Nation States. And the motivation for that was mainly because when Syrup had been purchased by a US publisher, and it was absolute dream come true. I went from complete obscurity to having a book that multiple publishers were bidding on, and my agent did this amazing job of whipping up enthusiasm for the book, and I was paid a great advance, and so I was like, bestseller list, here I come. Now this is all set now. It's my inevitable rise to stardom has arrived. And then the book came out, and it was terrific to see it on the shelves, but nobody bought it. So it was then when I discovered that, okay, you can't actually just like hand a book to a publisher and expect them to do all the marketing for you. You actually have to do that yourself, and you have to give people a reason to buy a book by an author they've never heard of. So for Jennifer Government, I thought, what if I made a website and you could create your own country? You could live out your political ideals and build a country to be as brilliant as you thought it would be, or as terrible as you thought it would be, whatever, And I thought, if this could get 1,000 people to play it, then that would be 1,000 people who have heard of me, and there'd be a little thing from my book there that they could click on and follow a link and learn about it. So I did that. It turned out to be way more popular than I expected. And in the early days of the site, it was new on the web in a way that you can't really be new on the web anymore.
Yeah.
So it got written up by the New York Times, and I was interviewed about it here, there, and everywhere. And every day there would be a doubling of how many people were on the site before. And it's meant that it really did give Jennifer Government exposure that it otherwise wouldn't have had. And now nation states are still going. There's, I don't know how many million nations we're up to now, but
I think
it's a lot.
When I looked at it as of March, 9.5 million plus had been created. Over almost 600,000 are active. And my oldest, who loves this type of stuff, I said, give me your impression. They had a couple of questions for me. They were like,
right,
average traffic, server costs, especially in the beginning. And do you have personal nations on there yourself?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it is amazing to me that this thing is still going at all, because it is now 22.5 years since I launched the site, and not many places on the web that existed that long ago are still there today. It was a really bare bones website, and it was just what I'd been able to put together in a few months. And what happened is all these people came and created a community on top of the very basic platform that I created. And that is still going. There are people who have met through the game, gotten married, had children. So that is mind-blowing to me.
That's crazy.
It was, yeah. I had a nation Maxtopia in the very beginning, but it used to get a lot of telegrams. Nations can send each other telegrams. So, yeah, I have a nation or two where I do occasionally have a little play around with them, but they're not public. And yeah, if they got out, then they would be harassed.
They would be inundated as well. I love that. All right. Time for a quick break while we rethink everything we just said and even a few of our life choices. You're listening, even though you're not supposed to. Don't worry, no one's listening. Okay, while we're taking a quick break, I want to say thanks to my producer, Lisa Lindo, who you can't see or hear. She is the ghost in the machine keeping us all on track, or at least trying to, by telling me during these breaks what I didn't do, which is what she's probably doing right now. So when you hear out of context mentions of Lisa, that's who we're talking about. Say hi to everyone, Lisa. Like I said, you can't see her or hear her. The platform doesn't record producers. It has something to do with their magic.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
All right, we are back with Max Barry. Okay, it's time for Laugh, Cry, Scream. This is where I ask you to share the stories that have hit you the hardest. A book, a movie, a show, or a scene that made you really laugh, one that made you cry, and one that made you scream, either from fright or frustration or just shouting at the screen, why are you going to hide in that room with the dangerous garden tools? So, Max, what is your laugh?
Oh, man. First of all, I feel like all my answers are going to be terrible to these questions because I have such trouble thinking back to moments. The laugh thing, my moment is from a podcast. Can I do that? I'm over from a podcast. I'm a fan of Survivor, the TV show. And there is this very well-known podcast. Rob has a podcast that covers it. One of them is trying to get the conversation back on track. And the other is making puns about a tribe's site being messy. And he says Meskameka at one point. And it's which is the name of a tribe from 3.5 years before. It is so random, but it made me laugh so much. So yeah, that is my laugh moment. I'm sorry. That's a terrible answer.
It's okay. No. If it makes you laugh. What's your cry?
Cry. Okay. I'm going to the big hitter here. I'm not sure if I can pronounce his name correctly, but Kazuo Ishiguro, obviously the author of many tearjerkers, especially Never Let Me Go, which is, that is a heartbreaker. But the more recent one that I read was Clara and the Sun, which also got me right at the end. Nevertheless, the ending of that book, I can't say the exact scene because like it's spoilers, but
no.
Yeah, but that definitely got me.
I love both of those books. I Clara and the Sun, agreed.
Yeah, they're beautiful. And science fiction, I'm a big science fiction guy. So yeah, they're terrific.
Science fiction in that way that your stuff is too, and my stuff is, which is based in the world. It's not like out in space. It's right here, right almost now.
Exactly right. Yes, grounded science fiction.
Exactly. What's your Scream?
Scream, I'm going to go back a long way for this one. So Stephen King, the Tommy Knockers. So there is a scene. I've never forgiven Stephen King for this. This still burns me to this day, which is why I mention it. So there's these two brothers and they're doing a magic show together. And the older brother is like getting the younger brother to be an assistant. And he doesn't really realize it, but he's using some dangerous magic / technology that he doesn't understand. But he wants to do a magic trick for the families. And he wants to make his little brother disappear for this magic trick. The younger brother doesn't want to do it, but he's trying to help, so he goes along with it. And then, ta-da, the older brother like releases the curtain or whatever. The younger brother has disappeared. The families are all like, oh, well done. And the younger brother is actually gone. And no one realizes except the older brother. And I was reading this book and I was so angry because there was no bad guy in the book to blame it on. And so this terrible thing had happened. And I was looking for someone to blame, and there was no villain. And so I had to blame the author, Stephen King, for making me feel that terrible thing. So, yeah, I don't know if I physically screamed, but it upset me a lot. And to this day, I feel like if I'm having something terrible happen in my book, I'd better make sure that the reader has someone to blame other than me.
Other than you. That's a very good one. I'm going to @ Stephen King with a little clip of this one when we release it. All right, so we're going to do some rapid fire questions. Lawyer, agent, editor, whose life do you save? You can only save one.
Agent. Definitely agent. Yeah, that was an easy one. I've had one agent for most of my career. My very first agent decided to leave the business. So I've never had a bad breakup with an agent. And I credit both of them with basically giving me the ability to do what I love as a job. So yeah, I mean, editors have been great too. I don't know if I've had a single editor survive from one book to the next. I don't think it's me killing them. I think they just, for whatever reason, editors move around a lot. So
after reading something you've written, has anyone in your life ever worried that you might be working through some things?
Yes, it used to bother me a lot in my very younger days when I would write all kinds of stuff, and horror and whatever. And my mother in particular would read everything through the lens of what is he really trying to say? And what I was really trying to say is like, this is a cool story. There's the girl gets hit by a train and everything. So that used to annoy me quite a lot. And it's really the flip side of the coin. Like we love the idea as writers that we create these fictional worlds and people really react to them as if they're true. So yeah, I can't really complain when people react as if they're true.
What's something you never get asked in interviews that you wish you did?
Oh, that is a good question. And I feel like I'll think of a great answer to that after this
tomorrow
podcast. Yeah. Like a lot of the talk is in these sorts of things is often about like big picture stuff and not the little detail. Like when you're actually sitting down and working on something, like we never talk about things like, okay, when you're doing dialogue, how often do you do a dialogue tag? How do you use pronouns? Do you use character names? But real technical stuff, I feel like never, ever, ever gets talked about. And even though it's small, what we do is the culmination of all of this small stuff. Probably we don't talk about it because it would be super boring to people who don't do this for a living. But
I love this stuff. Like one of the things that's so important is dialogue tags. As a screenwriter, I think I did it a little bit differently when I came in. And you tend to do this too, is you're setting a scene and you say he said, she said sometimes, but usually you're giving us a description of what that person's doing. And so we know who's speaking. Because when we're reading it, like when we're reading a script, we can just skip over that tag. When a narrator's reading it though, they've got to read the book. And it was so intrusive And
yeah. Especially, I would imagine, because the narrator, through their intonation, is already giving you the information of who said it before you even get to it.
Before you get it. And I really like mixing it up and either not using tags, especially if there's just two people talking, but when we need a reminder to make it be, he touched her hair, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the piece of dialogue.
I could talk about this all day. I think there's so much in this. Yeah. For Lexicon, it's mostly through these two characters' point of views. So I'm slipping back and forth between those. But in between, there are these little news reports or little random articles as if they're from the real world. So they're a bit of objective viewpoint. But because we've read the book, we can look at what these supposedly objective things are saying and actually glean the truth from it. Always a little bit risky when you do something like that. So my wife came up with this term that I really like called clever. And so clever is when she thinks that I'm writing well. And clever is when I think I'm writing well and she can tell. So I have to write cleverly, but I can't be clever.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I hear you. There's times when you're like, I'm being clever here. Right. And you see what I did. And as soon as you see what I did, then everybody's going to see what you did.
We want to enjoy a writer being clever, but every time we sit back and we think, gee, that writer has been clever, it's taken us out of the story a little bit. There's a few writers, Margaret Atwood is still doing it for me. It's like where I'm just like, I've got no idea what's happening here, but it's like how she did this. And I'm not even going to explore it, but I believe it and I love it. But yeah, a lot of books where the technical craft isn't quite there. It used to be I just enjoy a good idea, even if it was badly written, just love the story, and you can forgive a lot. But whereas now I can't forgive it. That is a sad thing when you see the sausage being made, and it's hard to enjoy sausages so much anymore. So yeah, I'm kind of inflicting that on my daughter to some degree by making her explore all this stuff. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is.
What have the kids read you yet?
Yeah, they're starting to. Yeah, they have read some. The older one, who's 19 now, I think she might have read all of them by now.
My kids, actually, my oldest always was like, this is great, but would tell me where funnier could be or give me great feedback. My youngest, he also gives great feedback. But he also said to me after he read the first book in the series and then the second book, he's like, I have to tell you, Dad, I'm really glad you're a good writer because it would have been really, really hard to be your kid and to be like, yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, I feel like your family can never really have that much respect for you because they see, you're just a person.
No, they can't. All right. We're going to pause the plot and maybe pause the snack as well. This is Don't Worry. No one's listening. If you are listening, despite all our warnings not to, follow the show, rate it, drop me comments and recommendations. I read them very slowly. I can be reached pretty much on all social media at Edward Savio, except, strangely, Facebook, where I'm at Edward Savio Writer. Lisa should be just about wrapping up giving her notes. So let's get back to more with Max Barry.
Don't worry. No one's listening.
Okay, still us, still talking, still somehow allowed by the authorities. This is Don't Worry, no one's listening. So, Max, I want to ask you about something. My stuff is I want to talk about hope and love, even when it's hopeless or loveless, even when the world is falling apart and it's pre-apocalyptic or apocalyptic. What are you trying to say with your books? And is there anything more subversive than just telling a cool, dark tale?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky question. I'm always very interested in how people relate to one another, and in particular, how people persuade each other. I think that's actually probably a common thread in my novels that isn't so obvious, that they're all quite concerned with persuasion in the sense of when two people interact, how does one bend the other to do what they want? And I find myself drawn to a dynamic where there is one person who is pushing, the other one is pushing back. So I am not a big fan of physical description of inanimate objects. As a reader, I've never really enjoyed that. The writers who are so talented and have such great command of language can, evoke amazing pictures. I can appreciate it on one level, but it's just not what really I love to read, and so I don't write it much either. But I do love dialogue and just how much dialogue reveals about how people are. That's a lot of what I enjoy doing. Social satire as well. Satire was where I started, and then I got away from that because the world is so ridiculous. How am I supposed to satirize this? And I think I got out at a good time because if I had tried to write satire over the last 10 years, I think I would have produced a series of books that were kind of limp because they weren't satirical enough. It's very difficult to be satirical enough now. But I may be coming back to it because I find myself tempted to find some new way to do satire in a post-satiric world. We don't need cynical satire anymore because we can all look at the world and be like, well,
it's right there. It's already there.
This is awful. Yeah. And we can see where this is going, and it's not great. We need joyful satire.
So talking about this irony, satiric thing, like how do you balance the comedy and the seriousness? I always want my stuff to be funnier. And I know a lot of times that's not what's right for the story. One of the first comments I got as a screenwriter was, Edward, not every character can be hilarious and witty and smart.
Yeah.
Syrup is funny. And Jennifer Government is funny. Lexicon, not as funny.
Muscular. Muscular is the word that I was using when I was working on it. I had sort of the idea of like 70s kind of thrillers, but...
How do you balance those things?
Yeah, I should say, like I've had, I think, 7 or 8 books published, and there are many others that I've written that have not been published. And a good chunk of those are books that I decided to write as comedies. So people had enjoyed books like Syrup and Jennifer Government and said, how hilarious they were. And so I'm like, okay, apparently I'm a funny writer, so let's like actually try to do some comedy. And those books apparently were not funny at all. So the lesson for me was it's funny if it's not primarily trying to be funny.
What do you think was the thing that put you over the line in those books that you tried to write funny? Because I've written straight comedy. Like I've written by myself straight comedy, but I've also written with a writing partner, like comedy team writing. I always feel like I'm a much more serious writer as a novelist now because I'm not doing the, running around sitcom funny thing. What was the line that you feel like you crossed that it didn't work?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure because I found these quite funny as I was working on them. I was working away and I'm chuckling to myself as I'm producing these pages. And then everyone that I had read it was just like, Max, this is actually not funny. So
was it like too dark funny? And it just,
no,
this is not
I think it was
funny
the other
stuff?
way. I think, it was like, it was too light. It was too, like there was no critique behind it. It was less of the absurd stuff and just that, Max is amusing himself. So that's why it didn't work. Yeah, when I'm working on a book, I have to convince myself that I'm working on the greatest piece of literature to ever grace the face of the earth. Because otherwise, why am I here? Like I will go and watch a movie or something instead. So I think that's a really healthy attitude for any writer to take into their project. That they have to sit down and convince themselves that they're working on something fantastic. And even if it's not fantastic right now, obviously, because it's a first draft and all first drafts are terrible. You have to have that faith in it. And it is a delusion because it's not actually an objective opinion, but occasionally that means that you can get very deep in a book that's actually not that great. So that is the downside of it. So I believe in it as a motivator. Like it's a great place to operate and to give you the confidence that you need to write well. You can't write defensively and scared and be like, oh, well, people like this. You have to be like, yeah, hell yeah, this is it. This is the one that's going to work. But the risk you take is that you come up with a 90,000 word comedy set in medieval France, like I did, and no one thinks it's funny.
I mean, come on. Being quartered is funny. I mean, it can be. I mean,
it's a very comedy rich time, Edward. It really is. I mean, at least it was in my head.
There's so many things like that I think writers should get together and just show each other some of those things Because there's great stuff on my computer that is fucking great, but just can't meet the whole thing. Like for the 20, 30, 40, 50 pages, you could go, this is great. You can't make a whole book out of it. You can't make a whole movie out of it.
Right. Yeah. Comedy is tough too, because
It's hard.
Like, I feel like if the people who read this book didn't just like not enjoy it, they started to hate me as a person. Like, if you're reading a book and it's supposed to be funny and you don't find it funny at all, you have quite an angry reaction to that book. I'm not sure why.
So we've talked a lot about this stuff. So research, do you go down rabbit holes?
Yes.
And what's your ripcord? How do you get out?
Well, first of all, as we previously discussed, all my books are true, and every single thing I put in there is thoroughly researched and absolutely could happen in real life. So yeah, it depends on the book a lot for me. I would much rather write something that feels good and feels right and worry about research later.
You got to tell a story, not tell the truth. If that makes any sense.
Well, yes, you've got to tell the truth the
big T truth.
That's
not
right, the
big
T truth. Exactly right. Yes.
The big T.
Yeah. So the research thing, you can do it later. It's super annoying because one of the things I love about publishers is they give you these fact checkers. So you get a note from people who say, like in Lexicon, that your characters stopped to get gas in Portland on a Wednesday, and union rules demand that someone else fill up your car in that particular state on these days. And I'm like, wow, I did not realize that. It's such an educational process. So yeah,
my producer, it lives in Oregon, and literally you cannot pump your own gas.
Yeah, there you go. I had no idea. And if I had just put that book out there into the world without this fact checker, then some people in Oregon would have been like, this book is a piece of crap. They can't even get the pumping gas thing right. So so thank God for that. But yeah, research, it's important. It's got to be there, but it can be challenging to fit it into the process.
By the way, also the only other state that does that, New Jersey as well. So if you're in New Jersey, same thing, can't pump gas. What's the most ridiculous thing you've ever Googled, and how thick do you think your FBI file or whatever the equivalent is in Australia would be?
Yeah, certainly I do, Google murder related subjects, and it's it's awkward to know, whether you should really be Googling that. Hopefully the FBI has like a little tag they can apply to certain people, like
writers.
So,
we have our little card that says, just looking.
There was a murder that I heard about a few years back where a wife who had murdered a husband. Evidence was, all of this research she'd done on how to murder and dispose of bodies. And I think she was a writer. And I'd wondered in which order these things had happened.
Which came first?
She actually decided to do the murder and then, as a good writer would do all the research to how to do it properly? Or was she researching her book and had to research all the murder stuff, and then thought, well, I've got all this information now, and my husband is getting pretty annoying, so it would be a shame for it to go to waste.
All right, so we're coming to the end here. I've been reading this quote by Charles Dickens from his foreword to David Copperfield, and I want to get your reaction to it. It would concern the reader little to know how sorrowfully the pen is laid down at the close of a 2 years' imaginative task, or how an author feels as if he were dismissing some portion of himself into the shadowy world when the crowd of the creatures of his brain are going from him forever. So, do you ever struggle with letting go of these characters? Especially since they're standalone. You don't write it, you don't pick them up again.
Yeah. No, it is a sad time. The enjoyable part of it is creating the book for me. And the first draft, especially in the early days, it was all about the first draft. And getting to the end of the first draft was a feeling of accomplishment, of course, but also, a real sorrow for letting go. And then the process of putting it out into the world is way less important to me now than it used to be, because the process of publishing is, you got to go do marketing, you got to talk about yourself on podcasts, and it's enjoyable to interact with the other humans now and again, but it's not the joy of it. The joy of it is the writing. It's a tremendous privilege as an author, and anyone who gets to do a job where they get to make their own decisions about what they're creating. So I get to decide each day what I'm going to make. And that is fantastic. I think that's a recipe for a happy life. If you get to control what you're doing, and if you're building something each day, and it doesn't matter if you're building novels or birdhouses, if you have the control, the choice over what you're doing and what you're making, that's a really satisfying way to live.
Yeah, I agree. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself through your writing?
I don't know. I guess looking back, I realized that I was a tremendous chauvinist in my youth. Like some of my early stuff now, I'll read back and there'll be a clunk here and there as I feel like, oh, that is the opinion of a young man who wasn't challenged enough. So yeah, probably that sort of thing. And it's still okay. Like it's okay for these things to exist because, we don't have to write perfect novels that are the encapsulation of moral correctness 100% of the time. But there's certainly something I've learned about myself.
So if you want people, how could they follow you?
They can go to maxbarry.com and they can sign up for my newsletter, which is, I do occasionally write articles and short fiction and just mail it out to people. And that's also a good way to hear about any new book that I have coming out. So yes, maxbarry.com, please subscribe.
All right. So one last thing. I'm the worst at getting off the phone. My kids make fun of me. I'll start saying goodbye and then we'll start a whole new conversation. So I'm saying goodbye, Max. But let's say we're done. We've been sitting around for hours talking, maybe having a drink, telling stories. What's the story or the thing that you tell me in a few hours that you haven't told me so far?
These are some really probing questions. Maybe I would tell you the story of working on a book about artificial intelligence that I started when it was a completely different thing to what it is now, which is what I've just done. So I've written this novel that I'm very happy with, and it tells a good story, but it is, as a backdrop, has this sort of world that doesn't exist anymore. And a lot of it is like sort of not applicable in a way that I expected it to be applicable. I would like to, we might discuss like what the heck I should do about that, because I'm not quite sure myself.
We should have that conversation, I think. Like, honestly, like I would love to take a look at that and if you would let me. And we could have an offline conversation about that because...
Yeah, let's do that, yeah.
I think it's
because I need pointers, yeah.
All right, well, Max, it's been so great talking with you. This is the best part of doing this, that I get to talk to intelligent, funny, interesting, surprising people face to face.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, it's been a great conversation. And yeah, I don't get to do a heck of a lot of this sort of stuff because, as you know, writing is a very solitary business. Probably more so for novelists and screenwriters. But yeah, so it's really great. And I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for hanging out. And this was better than therapy. Cheaper too.
Absolutely.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
DWNOL is produced by Lisa Lindo for Rocket Surgeon Productions and presented by Bookster. DWNOL themes by Trina Davis and Annie Musical Team. More later. Oh, hey, I forgot one last thing. Ray Bradbury said, "You only fail if you stop writing," which sounds simple, but it's actually the whole job description. Not brilliance, not genius, just not stopping.